Okay, well, hello. Welcome to another episode of Visual God. This is the part 2 of looking at bringing our decisions to God and asking for God's input, really, on, what do I do? Do I go right? Do I go left? Is this you? Is this not you? All of those scenarios we get involved in when we're trying to decide what to do. And really, just before getting going, I think it's worth just reminding ourselves again that this is one of those areas that we're not ever going to run out of opportunities to make decisions between like now or when Jesus returns. We're always going to be making decisions, and so this is kind of an area where there's just like always room for constant growth. And I think even 10 years from now, I'll still be asking like, how can I make decisions better? God, how can I hear your voice better? So that's the context where we're going. But I wanted to say a big welcome to Tom Allsop.
Thank you.
If you do not know Tom is a lead pastor of Catch Fire London since...
sometime between now and 2009.
Okay, yeah. Well,
it was one of those evolutionary roles.
Yeah, an evolutionary role, as ministry so often is. But I really appreciate you being here, Tom.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Tom and I are just in the prayer room at the London offices, and we've just lovingly told the School of Ministry students next door to stop worshipping, so that we can.
Don't like the optics on that, but hey.
Yeah, it's more of a noise issue than a heart issue, but they were very obliging. But yeah, one of the reasons why I wanted to sort of ask Tom for you to chat was the influence that you've had on my life with pastoring and helping me think. And one of the things that you've said that I probably repeated 500 times in the last few years is, don't tell me what to think, teach me how to think. And that's been massive in my life, and I know it's come into my ministry and conversations with other people that I want to be taught how to think and not just be reliant on my super apostolic leader telling me the answer. And I think as leaders it's like really easy to just want to give an answer to somebody and to get that. I think you were even preaching about it on Sunday, get that little ego boost, that little endorphin rush that I just fixed someone.
I find worth in someone needing me.
Yeah, completely. And so I really value that. And I perhaps just wanted to kick off with part testimony and also part a very familiar scenario for many of us. When we're asking a decision, God, I have a decision to make. You and I will have both had these conversations with hundreds of people. Someone says something along the lines of, I'm just asking God what I should do. I'm waiting to hear God tell me what I should do. We're just waiting on the Lord, seeking his will, those kinds of things. What's your experience in chatting to people about entering into those conversations?
Yeah, it's quite a common question I get in my line of work a lot, which is kind of when I'm chatting to people in the context of I've got a decision to make, or I'm kind of in a season where I'm wondering what's next for me, and I'm in a transitional season, and my experience has been, and this is actually a lot of the preachers I do come off the back of kind of my experience in closed door scenarios where I'm having a pastoral with someone, and they'll ask a question, and my response often in the moment will get me thinking along a train of thought, which will eventually evolve into a preach. And my rationale being, if people are, I think as preachers it would be great to answer questions that people are actually asking. I think a lot of the time, we preach a great idea, but actually these are real life questions that people have, and I'm a big fan of teaching being applicable to our lives. And what does the Bible tell us about how we make decisions? And I guess I just want to caveat any answer I say just at this stage by saying a lot of what I'll be talking about here, I'm assuming, is around God wanting them to grow us into maturity so that we can think for ourselves, so that we can make decisions for ourselves, so we're not infants. But I never want anything I say to seem like I'm saying there isn't a radical call for obedience on all of us. And so there are times when God will absolutely say, do this, and we just have to be obedient. It's not about our will, it's about his will. But I think there are other times, and as I walk my own journey of life, and as I help other people walk their journey of life, where I feel like sometimes our need for a decision from God can almost be debilitating, because My experience is
yeah.
that there's a lot of times where he's actually not giving us that guidance because it's not a yes/no answer. It's a, it's not should I go left or right. It's a where should I head? And often I think there are many different ways that we could go where God will bless that and will lead us in that way.
I think it can be so self-limiting sometimes, and this is what I was talking a little bit about in the last episode. That if I'm a dream person and all my major decisions in life have always been made because I got a dream about it or not, and I'm not dissing dreams at all, but if that's my primary focus, then I start to build something almost like a formula about, well, I must get a dream, and then if I don't, then and God wants to speak to me through the word or through a prophetic encouragement from someone, or just that knowing in a sense, because I'm so focused on that dream, that formulaic way, even if it served me well and God has legitimately used it, I not only end up limiting what he wants to do, but I think I probably would say I'm stifling the Spirit, because the Spirit wants to speak in an alternate way, and I'm so focused on this one way, or this, tell me what to do mindset, or this, it has to be told in the following way, God, for me to get it.
Yeah.
Can I put a question to you? Because 2012, you and I sat in a cafe on Wembley High Street, and I just said to you...
Little plug for Eco Cafe. Kamal, he's wonderful.
Yeah, very nice cafe. And I was coming to you with a need, and it was... I feel God has given me an opportunity, or he's asked me a question, which was, Alistair, you're a school teacher right now. If you weren't teaching next year, what would you be doing with your life? And I said, well, God, I would be doing ministry or going on mission to Kenya. And God replied, well, why don't you do that? And I had been so conditioned up in my life up to that point that God would tell me to go left or go right, that I was so underprepared for a rhetorical question from God. Like, why don't you do that? Why don't you do that? Why don't you do that? I didn't really know how he was phrasing it. I just had that sentence. And I remember sat in front of you at that cafe saying, I don't know, Tom, should I stay being a teacher and, be an influence in the school and, promote the gospel among the kids and the parents? Is that the right thing to do? Or should I go into ministry and volunteer and serve and get stuck in? Is that the right thing to do? And I had perhaps even become debilitated, crippled by this phrase, the right thing. And essentially, I think I was saying, God, what are you saying yes to? And you spoke into that in a way that kind of not only made me able to make the decision, it also pretty profoundly influenced my ministry from that moment on. So can you just talk about that kind of conversation and where you were coming from there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think even just dispelling this myth right away that there's a right way and a wrong way. And there are times when God speaks clearly, but we're not slaves, we're co-laborers. Yeah. And so there's times when it's right to be a bondservant to Christ, and God will speak and we obey. And that's why I preface that at the start. We can't take one teaching in the isolation of another. So if God's saying, do this, then you better do it, because, obedience is great. Yeah. But, I think there are times where there's not a right way. And even in that, there are times where God has an ultimate destination, but how you get there, it's a bit of an obscure example, but Jonah, you're going to go to Nineveh and you're going to preach salvation. Whether you get there by boat or by belly of whale is in many ways irrelevant to me. And so I think there are times where God has an ultimate goal, and how you get there are 5 or 6 different ways that he can go, and you're going to be thoroughly blessed whichever way you go, and God works all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And so if you are confident that you're walking in the purposes of God for your life, I think my experience is, with me, God tends to give me more goals than tasks. And there are times when he gives me specific... you think about the instructions for the construction of the temple. He speaks with a level of specificity that is exact. And there are other times where you think about Abraham. Like, Abraham didn't know where he was being called to, but he knew where he couldn't stay. And even within that, think about Genesis 18 and Abraham changing God's mind. I'm going to smite the city. Oh God, wait, would you save it for 50 righteous people? And so in all of this, there's an interesting kind of journey we go on into the will of God. And I personally don't subscribe to total sovereignty. I believe God is sovereign, but I believe that he gives us free will in many, many areas. And so there are times when the will of God is sovereign, for Jesus to be the sacrificial lamb, let there be light. There are times where God speaks and it's established.
Yeah.
There are other times where I think it's perhaps what I would call the preferred will of God or the implied will of God.
Yeah.
It is the will of God that none should perish.
Yeah.
Yet the Bible also teaches that some are going to reject Jesus and will perish. And so it's that idea of it's the will of God for your life that you be prosperous, that you are a witness to him, that you extend the kingdom, that you love God and you love people. Like there are lots of things that God gives us in scripture where it's like, this is how I want you to live your life. But I think often it's that, we spend a lot of time asking God, what should I be doing?
Yeah.
Whereas I think God is probably more interested in how you do it.
Yeah.
As opposed to what.
Yeah. And who are you calling me to be, God?
Yeah.
Because if I'm being the person you've called me to be, then I will by definition do the things that you've set aside for me to do.
Yeah. There's that verse in Ephesians, I can't remember the exact verse now, but it says essentially, and this is the Tom Allsop paraphrase, whatever you do in word or deed, do it all for the glory of God, giving thanks to Jesus. It's that whole thing of like, whatever you do, can be God's will if you do it God's way. Yeah.
And I think that there's something so freeing in that. And I'm thinking back to being sat in that cafe and just having this huge paradigm shift in my mind that this idea that actually as a believer and as a son, that I had choice as part of it. And I don't know whether it was, a quasi-Catholic upbringing or the general accepted theology in the world that you just asked God to say yes to things. But I remember being so profoundly moved by this idea that I could say, well, God, I think I want to take the left fork in the road. And if it's wrong, tell me no. Give me a no. And that suddenly engaged so much of my faith issues, my trust issues, my provision issues, because I think to a degree I was abdicating ownership over this plan, because if God tells me, then it's got to work out. But if I choose, then there's a chance I could choose wrong.
Absolutely.
And so for me, that kind of idea that instead of asking for a yes, Lord, should I stay as a teacher? Should I go into ministry? You challenging me and saying, well, why don't you ask him for a no? Why don't you tell him, God, this is what I think I want to do. And if it's wrong, stop me and make it clear. And I'm going to listen, and I'm not going to shut my eyes, close my ears, and tune it out because I really just want you to agree with me. And that idea of choice, and like you said, with Abraham talking to God, God wanted to hear Abraham's choice. He engaged in the conversation.